Right, so in this video, I'm going to help you make some good decisions on how you're going to pick your new irons. So I had one of my pupils, Chris, you won't mind me naming him, in for a lesson, but he wanted to look at some irons as well, some new irons potentially. And the two that he had his eye on were both TaylorMade. One was the P770 and one was the P790. So I think when golfers make decisions about buying new irons, there's a few criteria that they take into it. So I think you've got kind of looks, feel, performance, price. Now, because P790 and 770 are the same price, that took that completely out of the kind of decision making. So I'm going to hit some shots and kind of show you 790s, 770s. I know you guys will have probably seen these before, but I'm also going to run you through some of the numbers because Chris found it really, really difficult to kind of decide, you know, which iron he probably favoured. And I'm going to just talk you through the kind of process when we look at a few of his numbers and kind of how we discussed how it's going to benefit his game as to potentially which would be the best set of irons for him kind of right now, going forward, and ultimately helping him play better golf. Right, so when we looked at the 770 and the 790, like I said, the criteria, the price made no difference because all the P series irons are the same price. So then when we went on to looks, now Chris really, really liked the look of the P770, more so from the back. I would ultimately say when he looked down on top, he didn't really notice a massive difference in the two clubs, but from the back, which I know when you're hitting shots makes no difference at all, but he definitely preferred the look of P770. And I think as a result of that, kind of the heart was saying 770. So when we look at Chris's good solid one with the P790, we saw 150 carry, spin rate a little bit lower at 5.3, which we'd expect with that slightly lower loft, but a really good smash factor at 1.36. And that's obviously down to the fact that that stronger loft gives a bit more ball speed off the face. Still hits the ball nice and high though, so he's got that chance to stop the ball, but 150 carry with a 7-iron is really, really strong. Now this was the really, really massive one for me with the P790. We can see not the best of strikes towards the toe. Smash factor still right up the same as a good strike. Spin's very much the same, and we only lose 4 yards. So the P770, decent strike. We saw the smash factor was down at 1.3, so still a solid smash factor, but that slightly weaker loft not enabling the ball speed. So we see 137 carry, which again is still a really good number for 7-iron for Chris, and much more spin at 6,100. So again, that extra loft costing us a bit of ball speed, but giving us a bit more spin, so potentially a bit more stopping power. But this is where, for me, the P770 maybe doesn't quite perform, so that little bit towards the toe strike. The spin rate still stays up, which is great, but the carry really, really drops off and the smash factor drops off. So definitely saw less forgiveness in the 770. So we saw Chris's numbers there, and, you know, really, really good, solid numbers. And as I hit 770, you know, I think it's a really, really nice looking golf club. I still think that even though it's funny, it's not a weak loft nowadays, but it's not a strong loft, so it's kind of in the middle. But I still think it feels very, very quick off the face. And we can see my shot there, kind of 167 carry, 6,000 spin. You know, for a modern 7-iron, that's really, really good, solid numbers. And I think even the one that you just don't quite get all of, that felt maybe like shows a solid strike, but maybe a little bit clean. Still 161. Spin was still good. So I think if you're fairly near the middle of the club face as your miss hit, and maybe a little bit up and down, I still think you get very, very good performance from 770. Maybe if you get that one a little bit more towards the toe, like I've got there, we can see that smash factor drops off quite a bit. Still lots and lots of spin. And don't get me wrong, it's not a huge drop off. You know, so I think, for me, hopefully, when I'm into those shorter clubs, I wouldn't be kind of mishitting them. But the conversation we had with Chris was that in his current set, he's got some Callaway irons that he goes 6 down to pitching wedge. But he also has a TAYLORMADE Speed Blade 6 iron, which goes 10 yards further. And it's definitely the fact that it is a little bit more powerful than the Speed Blade, but it's also more forgiving. So it's not so much in those short clubs for Chris, but it's very much that as he gets into maybe 6, and if he were to put a 5 in the bag, maybe the P770 wouldn't quite give him what he's looking for. Now, P770 is a different beast. You know, it's a little bit bigger. Definitely from the back, it didn't fit his eye quite as much. But like I said, I think the back of the club is more shelf appeal, obviously how it looks in your golf bag, but doesn't ultimately affect when you set up to the golf ball. Now, if I hit P790, turn that one over a little bit. So you see a little bit towards the toe, but we still see a really good smash factor. See that extra distance and lower spin, much as we saw with Chris. But it is that little bit of a mishit where I think this kind of becomes maybe the more appealing club for guys. I think loads of guys with the heart want P770. And in my opinion, P770 will still be a huge selling iron. I reckon it'll probably be TaylorMade's second biggest selling iron ever. And I think, you know, because it is a bit more forgiving, guys definitely feel like they can maybe not have to strike it perfectly every time. And therefore might build a bit of speed. And again, we can see there, I've not got that one out the middle, but that's still going to get out there. 173, lower spin. So remember, when you're looking to control the ball and get it stopping, there's 2 ways. You've got height and spin. Now, I think if you are somebody who hits the ball a decent distance, you'll get decent height because the ball continues on that trajectory. So you can afford to probably lose a little bit of spin. Then the argument is maybe you don't need the power iron that gives you the distance. But the thinking with Chris was that I think certainly when he looked at them behind the ball, it didn't really go one way or another. Didn't, you know, pick the 770 up, say, I love that, pick 790 up and think, I really don't like that. You know, he really did like P790. And when he did get the really, really good one, it was definitely starting to take him to a distance that he doesn't normally get with 7. Now, I know we might argue that basically the number on the bottom of irons nowadays is becoming a little irrelevant. It then comes down to loft. But if the ball's still launching like a 7 iron and getting to the height a 7 iron would, it's just got more ball speed and less spin. It's just a different trade-off, isn't it? But the way we discussed the irons potentially for Chris, and this might be something that you guys would do, just got to be sure, and this is where I think getting fitted is so important, getting some good feedback. You know, I'm really lucky. I say lucky. I've got TrackMan, so we use that in my coaching sessions and any fittings. Is if we were going 770s for Chris, we would probably go 6 to pitch and have a 6 iron in the 790, because he's definitely a club longer in these. So again, he would have 2 6 irons, but again, one could argue then plays more like a 5 iron, but it would be more forgiving and it would help. I actually think towards the end of the session though, we were getting to that point where he was actually saying, I'm not going to say how old he is, but he made the comment a lot of times during the session that, you know, he's not getting any younger. So potentially the extra forgiveness that P770 would give him would benefit in the mid to his longer iron right now, but the overall forgiveness actually might benefit more going forward. And certainly if he has a day where he's not striking it as well, you're definitely going to see the benefit in 790. I mean, that's really poor. Heely, a little bit thin. Smash factor still stayed really, really decent. And at 155 and 6.5 spin, you know, it's still a great number with a really poor strike 7 iron. So we actually didn't make a decision, and we're going to chat a little bit more next time. But I think he's definitely leaning towards maybe all P790s because of that forgiveness and performance through the set. Right then, guys, so I hope you've enjoyed the video. So just my perspective on kind of how you should be choosing new irons. Now, I appreciate I've only done it using 2 of the TaylorMade models, but I think a lot of what I've spoken about there becomes very irrelevant of what manufacturer it is, what model it is. I think you've got to find something that fits budget, that looks good, that feels good, that performs, not necessarily always about just as far as possible, but it's that, does it get the ball high enough? Does it get enough spin to stop the ball? And this is what you've got to have that discussion with your fitter. What do you want from a new iron? I mean, like I said, for Chris, very much, I think heart says that, P770. But I think head says P790. Now, he might have changed his mind by the next time I see him. I doubt it. And he'll probably comment on this video. But I just think, sometimes it is important sometimes to let the heart influence, but I don't think it can then become a negative influence. And if you're buying brand new irons nowadays, they're not cheap. They're not an investment because they do lose money. But I think if you're going to spend a lot of money on clubs, get something that's absolutely the best that you can use, that suits you right now and is going to suit your game going forward. So if you're a beginner, a complete beginner might not get fitted, but if you're someone very new to it, you might not go for the ultimate forgiving club, because it might be that you'll get better really quicker, and then you'll want a club that maybe challenges you a little bit more. But again, this is where you need to have that conversation with whoever's fitting you and make sure you get some good feedback on how the ball's performing, how the clubs perform for you, get them set up properly, and then you can make the correct decision, like Chris is going to do hopefully, and put the best clubs in the bag to suit your game. So guys, if you have enjoyed today's content, you don't currently subscribe, please consider clicking the button below, ring the notification bell, then you'll find out whenever I drop a new video. Follow me on all my social media platforms, all under Ali Taylor Golf. Hopefully catch up with some of you guys down here soon. Stay in contact.